Okay, so with the cockpit all done and finished off, we can start to make away on some of the other areas. Now the big thing is we're going to have the equipment cage actually hanging down. Now this is the part that hangs below and behind the actual tail system, but just behind the wing section, and it swings down, and in here you've got the major electronics for the actual aircraft. Now to be honest, this particular one is from the tram version, the E, but it gives us a rough idea. It's just the boxes may be a little bit different. Certainly they look a little bit bigger than what we've got for down here, but it does give us a good reference for what we have. So the system would have you, if we look at the instructions, you can see here basically putting it together, and it's got the colour call-outs. The only trouble to it is that, you know, to be honest, we want the boxes to be black. We want to do some weathering, we want to put a little bit of wiring in to liven it up, just the same as we did for the cockpit. But obviously we can't do that because one, you can't get into it once it's together, it's extremely tight, and secondly, obviously we want to paint it and get all around the boxes, and again, because of the framework, it's going to be extremely difficult to get in. So what we need to do is to do a sort of twofold attack. So down here I've already got the parts out and I've cleaned them out. So we've got these boxes which we're going to have to spray or paint black, which is no problem at all. We'll just bung those onto a little stick and get them painted. Then we can give them a little bit of dry brushing just to sort of give them a bit of tone. We've got a little bottle there which I presume is coolant. That's obviously going to be silver. The rest of this bits here though are actually going to be done in white. Okay, so what we're going to do, like we did before, is use flat white like the cockpit, using it neat. That way it goes on, it sticks. Okay, gives a little bit of texture, so things like if we're going to come along with an ink wash over the top, should give us a really nice effect. So if we just spray these white on white, you're not going to see very well, but you'll get the point. Okay, so again, just as did before, take your airbrush, get your air pressure right up to sort of maximum. Okay, give your paint a good mix, and then straight into the colour cut, so it's neat straight in there. We're just going to check our flow. Okay, got some locking tweezers to hold on to bits, so I'm just going to grab an area where we're done, and there we go. We can just literally spray this white, and because you're doing it with a very thick paint, it won't take much to cover it. But just remember to come in all the insides and the outsides, and in all the areas. So because it's all framework, it does make it particularly difficult to go round and do. Okay, and there we go, that's one done. And then you can come around with the rest of the bay. Now this one here, I've sort of half glued, it's half held together. There's no sort of right and wrong on this one. Okay, but what we can do again is spray this. Don't worry about the ejector pin marks on the base plate as it looks like, because quite frankly we're gonna do those, will be on the inside anyway, so you won't see it. But certainly need to do the bottom. And the thing you have to remember, this sort of hangs upside down. So we can just about get down in there. Okay, so I'll just carry on doing the others. Okay, one thing, just as you're here, I can show you. You might be able to see, we've got these little balls appearing on the end. Okay, just down there, catch it without the light. See it on the tip? When you're spraying neat, just be careful of those, because what happens is every now and again they build up and they will flick. Okay, so they're quite important that you don't leave them on. So just give them a pinch clean just to get rid of them. Otherwise, as I say, you'll get a spit. And sometimes it's not so bad when you're doing something like this, but if you're doing something else, it can cause quite a bit of trouble. Okay, so I'll just carry on with these. Okay, so as you can see, we're getting on with this one, putting them together. So we're just putting the bricks on now. Bricks or electronics boxes. So all we're doing literally is a couple of drops, and the usual thing, because it's a pre-painted part, don't rub around as much as you normally would if they weren't, because all you're trying to do is roughly fill the holes, make sure we've got the right one, and then these got little feet poke through. The other way you can do it, if you're worried about, obviously with pre-painted parts, is to pop it in first, like so. Okay, hold it, flip it over, and go into the holes from the rear. And then what happens is the capillary action then will zip around and pull it round, okay? But the big thing is, because you painted the part, don't touch it. If you're going to move it around and anything else, all you're going to do is end up making a complete mess. It's not so bad for us. We're going to weather this one, same as we did the cockpit. Exactly the same, so any little scrapes you get, I wouldn't worry too much about it. But anyway, that's the 2 boxes in. So now we can put in this, I presume is a coolant system type thing going on in here. So how does this guy fit? He is at an angle. So again, we're just going to come in, put glue at the top and at the bottom. Okay, and then this guy is going to go in. So we've painted this one silver. So if we can find the holes, there we go. To be honest, I have found that this particular glue, the Mr. S type, this one here, does tend to eat the paint more than my favoured one, which is the Tamiya Extra Thin. As I said, I'm almost out of this one, and I have got some more on order, but it's having to come obviously from anywhere else but the UK, because you can't buy it in the UK. But that's the only trouble. The only slight drawback with this one is a little bit more smelly perhaps than the Tamiya, although that may be just because I'm used to it, and certainly from a point of view of melting paint and the solvents. The Tamiya one, you tend to be able to put it on it and it just lays flat. This tends to be a little bit more of a hot action, I think, and rub it all away. So anyway, that's those in now, okay? So what we're going to do is let them dry completely and go off. And in the meantime, you can make up exactly like we did with the cockpit for all that wiring that we did down here at the back. All these sections down here, we're going to repeat on here. So same thing, you might want to look at your reference photos. To be honest, I haven't got any massively really good colour ones. Got plenty of black and white like this, but as you can see, or I hope you can see, we have got a few little wiring bundles you can see in here running up and running around to all the different areas. It's not huge, there isn't zillions of cables running around this, but there is enough. So what I'm going to do is repeat the same process as we did for there. We're going to make tiny little holes into where they're going to connect into, just so the wires have got something to go into. Let them hang out and go further than you actually want. Paint them up, then we can install this, put it together, okay? And then what we can actually do is poke the wires around where we actually want them to be, give it a weathering wash, and then that one will be done. Okay, and there you go. You end up with something looking just like this. Okay, which looks a little bit odd because actually the way it will be is that way up. Okay, it all sort of hangs down by the back. This here actually works amazingly. Is a little access ladder to climb up inside, I do believe, or something like that. It seems funny it hangs down. Looking at it, it does look like you can then poke your head up inside the void, which is in the top there. So anyway, we've got all these cables hanging out. So looking at the way on the pictures we've got here from our actual reference guide, we can see a lot of these cabling actually go to the outside of this area, because obviously this is the guy we're making. So what I'm going to probably do is put them around the outside, but what I want to do first is weather it up. We're going to do exactly the same as we did last time. So we've got our India ink wash here. We're just going to do exactly the same as we did before. So we're just going to make sure we've got a clean brush. Okay, pick an area where you want to hold this, and then literally we're just going to grind this up. And don't forget, don't panic quite yet, because it hopefully will all come back and all be good and give us a nice grimy look. But what you want to do, obviously, same as you did with the cockpit, is just make sure you're smooth everywhere, okay? And then obviously what we need to do is get it down in there. But looking at those reference shots, it does look like it's a grimy area. It does look pretty nasty in there, okay? So what we can do, we can just poke it all around down in there, give it a wipe, and then just make sure you cover your exits up so you don't get left with any big brush marks. As you can see, it's going to be a pain to hold this. I'm just wondering if I use some locking tweezers, it's enough to physically grab it. That's a lot better. We have got a couple of little bits to go on yet, but to be honest, they're going to go on afterwards because I'm a bit worried about knocking them off just for the minute. Okay, so what we need to do is, that's that side done, let's get this down inside. I'm not worried about going over these boxes quite yet. Okay, just down this other side. But just make sure you cover it evenly all around everywhere. Okay, because what we're going to do is, this is going to be a first wash, and then we're going to give it a second coat. That will make it slightly darker, but obviously we're not going to have to go everywhere with it. So we just do these back areas. As I say, it's all a bit fiddly getting in everywhere, but I think it's probably the best way. I don't think we'll be able to weather it without making a bit of a mess. It's just remembering to get around all the different sides of it, so you're not in a situation a bit like this where it's white on the inside. Okay, so just make sure you go everywhere. If you've got any little blemishes or any little marks you've missed, then by all means cover them up with this. Okay. All around those areas, so we just got to do this back wall, that's going to be all in and seen, so just a tiny bit more around here, a little bit just down there. Okay, and just down inside the framework, because remember we just want to keep this all nice and even. And obviously we've still got to do the back in here because you're going to see it from looking through. So we just take care of that down there. Then again, this side. And the thing with all the washes, they're absolutely brilliant as long as you don't miss a bit. Because what it does, it sort of makes everything sort of uniform and it dulls everything down and everything's perfect. The trouble you have is where you miss a bit and it's still white, and that way it sort of spoils your effect and your illusion of using the wash. Because all of a sudden you've got a real clean bit and it shows up exactly what you've done. So just make sure it's all covered, that way it's all a little tiny effect instead of it sort of standing out like a sore thumb in case you miss it. Okay, so we just got to do these fronts and this rear, and then what we'll do, we'll let this dry for about an hour and then we can come back. These areas I was talking about you don't want to miss. Okay, but there we go, that's all done and weathered in now. So it will hang just like this downwards. Okay, all of those areas will dry, this will flick down just like that. We can poke all these wires in, add a little bit more wiring if we need to really liven it up, but certainly I think it looks a lot better, okay, with a little bit of wiring. Without it, again, it'll be like the cockpit, it will be okay, but it's not going to look perfect, okay? This way your eye's taken around, and that's the whole point with all of the modelling, is that you're trying to divert people's eye all over the place. So that way, they're not just looking at a model, okay, they're looking at it and they'll look, oh, there's a nice model, and then they look at all the details and the eye is drawn all the way around. So we've done it with the cockpit, so you know the weak part really is the seats. So by doing a little bit of the wiring at the back, you think, oh, that's very nice wiring, nice weathering at the back, the cockpit, nice dry brushing, things like that, so your eye goes all over it and you get a more sense of all over. Same with the engines, we could have left them, but by rewiring them it gives you something to look at. Just the same with down here, this bit will be hanging off the back, it'll be very noticeable on the model, and then because it's got the wiring, same thing again, you'll be all of a sudden thinking, oh look, there's the wiring, and yeah, following it where it goes and everything else. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to let that bit dry. I've got these little bits down here which go on the top here, and that's how it attaches up into there. We've also got, which we've done white, but we haven't done the back, okay? We're going to actually put this on afterwards. I was going to put it on to start with, but I think it will probably be easier to paint this white and get it all finished so it goes in, because I'm hoping that it'll be a way of fitting it in afterwards, because we want to obviously weather this the same as we do the main aircraft at the same time. If we can't and we have to fit it and have this hanging out, it'll just be a little bit of a shame, but I'm going to see if there's a way of putting it in separately. Okay, so now with the electronics bay, which is painted up here, all completely done, looking pretty heavily weathered, maybe a little bit over the top, but we'll see when it's together. I'm going to make this thing look pretty worn in, as if it's near the end of the deployment. Obviously we've got it in some maintenance, so we're going to have everything hanging out of it. Certainly going to have that engine removed and things like that. So I want it to look quite worn, but perhaps a little bit over the top. Anyway, moving on. Now, the instructions as you see them down here, obviously we're up to here, we've just done this section here, number 5. Number 6 talks about gear and going through. Okay, personally, obviously gear will do near the end. There's no problem with actually the way they go in, they just plug in straight away, so it's not going to cause any particular problem. Sometimes you might get a kit and you need to put it in because perhaps the way it all goes in, perhaps you've got doors fitted, other areas, or just the way it locks onto the aircraft could be an internal part of it that you might not be able to put it in later. Looking at all these, they seem to be pretty much straightforward. So this is just the main gear ones. They've got these little castle tops on there. They're going to go in okay. The windscreen, stuff like that, personally, it's pretty fragile stuff. I'll do it last or very close to the end. Talks about the nose wheel gear going in again. It's just this sort of castle nut system that goes on and is going to fit into this well system in here, so we can do that last. Speed brakes, now this is a personal choice. Personally, I'm not going to have mine open because they didn't use them. You know, that was the point, that 90% of the A versions had them bolted up. It was only very early, and apparently they had real stability problems when they were deployed. Obviously ours has the ones on the wingtips. We're going to be folded up, you wouldn't see them, and certainly from a maintenance point of view, I'm sure they wouldn't have them hanging out anyway. So I'm not worried about steps 11 and 12. We are going to put the bay in though, into the model, so I've got it cut out and cleaned up here, but we're not going to worry about wiring it up and everything else. Now, this sort of breastbone system, as it works in, I've got this one here. Now, we have got ejector pin marks all on the other side. They're quite shallow, okay, you probably catch them in the light like that, but this side's going to have the engine, so it's going to be very busy, you're not going to see it. Luckily for us, and it was more, you know, chance by anything, the other side doesn't have any at all. This is the side you're going to see, because we're going to have the empty slot here with the engine hanging off that inner pylon. So what you actually have is a situation where you have this bottom piece here goes onto the actual spine, which we've done already, and then what you've got is these guys which go to the outside and just push in 1 and 2, and this is for the actual wheel well itself, which isn't too bad. Okay, it could do with a little bit livening up, which is something I think we'll do once it's painted again. We'll come in with some wire and go through it all. So all we're going to do for the moment is just glue this into position. And to be honest, the old glue is getting a bit dire now on the height of it. I have ordered more, so hopefully it'll be here pretty soon. Okay, so we're just going to make sure this goes all in. Okay, and again we just make sure it's all pushed up into and locked in. And just to make sure you haven't got any big gaps in that, using plenty of glue, we're just going to put it down on the inside, down in here, and obviously the capillary action will zip around and take care of all the joins and lumps and bumps perhaps we've missed. Okay, so that one is in, and we have that wishbone section on there now. The other thing we've done at the same time is we've put in this rear sort of bulkhead area in here, and these pins. Now don't think all the pins are the same length, they're not. You've got longer ones go to the rear, shorter ones to the front. There is a reason for that, is because you can see in here we've got a little tab just down in here, and we've got another one at the top. This is what this rests onto, and it sort of keeps it all in the middle and separate. It does also fit down onto here as well, so you might be able to see it. We've got it just down in here, so it does go level with the back, but it gives you an idea of what we've got. And then obviously this front area is going to click all into this point as well. So it's all a little bit fragile at the moment, so you want to glue those in and let them go off and go pretty firm and everything else like that. At the same time, we've also done the rudder. Okay, so the entire rudder moves. It's the entire back piece as well. The lower part's a little bit different moves. I'll clean it up afterwards. I found you get a little bit of a gap running down here at the back, if I'm honest, so I used my scissor technique of doing upside down, holding it in and painting it just like that. Next up, the intakes. Now, obviously, we're going to have this open, and in maintenance, realistically, perhaps they would have FOD covers over it, but I want us to be able to look into it from all different directions. So I don't want to have FOD covers on it. I'm going to have them actually off. So what we need to do is talk about actually cleaning up and making seamless intakes. Now, to be honest, these go together. Not brilliant, you know, but at the end of the day, you're always going to get this sort of seam running down. Which camera is going to be best for this? We just drop the top one and we bring you guys in from the side just a little bit, maybe out of the two, but you might be able to see we've got quite a seam running down in there all the way, and as I say, both cameras, something like that. So what I'm just basically going to do, hold it together, get the best you can. All right, and to be honest, I've already had a little bit of a feel around, and then just come in with plenty of glue. Okay, just going to start from the outside, put a little bit in, and then hold it. And you're looking to get it as good as you can get down there on the inside, okay? So we just want it all down there like that. All right, so that's one half done. And then the other, and usual thing, because it's a weld action glue, you should find that it'll pull together and push together a little bit, giving you a better sort of seam. Now if you want to, you can come along with rubber bands and stuff like that just to hold it in and get it as close as you can. Then drop glue, plenty of it, and let the capillary action follow like that right the way down to the other side, and do them in both directions. And then literally leave it to go off for a good couple of hours. Now at the same time, we've done this little guy and we've got them in here just like that, and as you can see, or hopefully you can see, it's not too bad. You know, it's not brilliant, but it's not that bad. I've seen a lot worse. So what we want to do is make it completely seamless. Now we've covered this many times before. Personal choices, I like to use something like a Mr. Surfacer or a putty, for instance, to go down there. What I'm going to do, I'm going to try something a little bit different. Normally what I do is I'll make up a softest type of putty. But what we're going to do, we're just going to do it with normal. This is just our good old Mr. Favourite here. And this has got a slight curve to the blade, as you can probably see. So what this enables you to do is we're just going to come in and put in a good thick quantity, which is complete overkill, just like this. Okay, so what you're trying to do is allow for shrinkage straight away. So you're putting in a lot more than you would ever need. Okay, just down there like that, and then we'll just do the other side. And then the point with this is that we're going to sand a little bit, and then we're going to come in with some type of thinner that will hopefully will take care of it all for us and get rid of the gaps. Now I've got a little bit everywhere where I don't really want it. Okay, but the idea of flooding the entire area like this is to completely overdo it, because you know it's going to shrink back. Going to leave that for 24 hours as well, so it can really get on with it. We've got lots of other bits we can get going with. So then hopefully what will happen is any shrinkage, any problems, it's taken care of. If you to scrape it back to the minimum, so you've got a nice clean up, what's going to happen is you're going to get a little bit of shrinkage. You're going to have to come in again and again. The idea with that is going to be very thick, then we'll come along a little bit later, sand it out with a, you know, a skinny stick in there, something like that, quite roughly, and then we're going to go around and polish it up then with things like, as I say, you can use acetone, you can use IPA, different types of thinners that attack the actual plastic as well as the actual filler itself, to end up giving you a nice smooth sort of welded up look to it. Then we're going to come in with polyurethane paints, because they've got great covering capabilities. Okay, completely flood the area with it, then let it dry again a couple of days and go through. Now I know it sounds like a little bit of an overkill, but intakes are one of those areas where you always look at, and as a modeler you will look at other people's, because you know that's where a seam is and you're trying to identify it. Okay, so sometimes it's worth having a little bit of patience, a little bit of time building up areas and getting those sections right. I'm thinking of F16s, Corsairs, something has a big intake. We all do it. Oh, let's have a look, see if you did that. There's an ejector pin mark in that Corsair, I know. And to see, and everybody does it. So if you know it's done, it's one of those areas you think, I can stand back and look at that intake. That's absolutely seamless, beautiful bit of work. And it's just one of those things. I think other areas, it doesn't really matter. You know, intakes, things like that, and sometimes like cockpits, it's nice to get spot on, okay, and move through. But it's not a quick fix. It's one of those things, you might do it, you might put some paint into it, looks horrible, refill it, carry on. But as I said, there's lots of other bits and pieces we can do in the meantime. You can get on with the gear if you're, you know, really pushing through. You can get on with other things, you can do weapons, anything else you want to, but just leave those bits and give them a bit of time to get going with.